Hi everyone, it's Lindy on here from Pink Whisper Designs. Today I thought we'd do some hot foiling with the Spellbinders hot foil glimmer system. So let's go ahead and get started. So for cardstock, we'll be using the Lawn Fawn Ground Coffee 100-pound weight cardstock. And for dies, we're going to use this beautiful die set from Spellbinders. We're only going to be using that outer frame, but you can see that it has all these gorgeous layers. And I'm hoping to do another card with these at some point. So you can see all these beautiful detailed layers that you have. And this is called the Canateel Rectangle die set. Again, this is from Spellbinders. So I've got that outer frame. I'm going to go ahead and die cut that. I'll just tape that down with a little bit of purple tape. And then I'll run that through the Spellbinders Platinum 6 die cutting machine. And now we have this gorgeous panel here. So I'll take this to my Tim Holtz paper trimmer and I'm going to cut this right down the center. So this measures 4 1/4. So I'm going to cut this at 2 1/8. And this will be the two sides of our gatefold card. So now I've got this beautiful Spellbinders Glimmer plate. This is this gorgeous autumn leaf border. So I'm going to take this and place it on the left side of my panel here. So again, this will be the left side of the card. Now I'm using the Glimmer hot foil system. This is the Glimmer foil and I'm using this beautiful gold, which is called Starburst. And you'll see here in a second the beautiful pattern this has on it. So I've got my Glimmer plate and I'm going to go ahead and tape this right down the center of this panel. And I'll just put a couple pieces of tape down. This is just purple tape, and that'll hold it in place. We're going to create a little hinge to slide our foil underneath here. And there is that beautiful design on this foil. So now what I want to do is place the pretty side of the foil against the pretty side of the Glimmer plate. So once I have those two sandwiched together, I can go ahead and trim away any excess here. I like to trim away the excess just so it doesn't accidentally foil any more than we need. So just, you don't have to be perfect about it, but just trim away any excess there. And you can use that excess for another project. Now I'm going to grab my Spellbinders Glimmer hot foil machine. And you can see that platform ready light is on. So I've turned the power on and that light is on. So we can go ahead and place the hot foil plate directly onto the platform. And then I'm going to place a piece of cardstock here. This is a 100-pound weight just to add a little additional pressure here. Then I'll go up ahead and place my thin shim down and then my spacer pad on top of that. So that's the sandwich we need here. And then I'm going to press that timer button and we'll wait until that turns solid. Once that's solid, we know we're ready to run it through the die cutting machine. So you can see that light is now on solid green. So I can pull out the whole entire platform and run that through the die cutting machine. And this is the Spellbinders Platinum 6 die cutting machine. And I'm going to run this through 2 times just to make sure I have enough pressure there. Now I can put that platform back into place and lift off all of these plates and that extra cardstock. I'm using the little magnet that comes with the system to place that on the silicone mat, which also does come with your hot foil system. And I'll let those cool. Meanwhile, I can pull off that foil and you can see this beautiful design that we have. So I've grabbed my Tombow Mono sand eraser and I'm going to remove any excess foiling there. And this just takes a couple seconds. And then I like to use my Nuvo Surface Sweep brush just to brush away any excess. It's a very soft brush, so it won't do any damage to the foiling. But again, just look for those little areas that might have been overfoiled. So off camera, I went ahead and ran the other panel through my hot glimmer foil system. So now we have these 2 panels. So to color these in, I'm using my Distress Oxide ink pads in Mustard Seed, Scattered Straw, Fossilized Amber, Twisted Citron, Mowed Lawn, Spiced Marmalade, and Carved Pumpkin. And I have all of these products listed and linked below and also on my blog. So now I'm using my little sponge daubers to do my coloring. I'm just going to place this on my We Are Memory Keeper silicone mat just to keep those ink pads from moving around. That silicone mat will hold those in place while we do our inking. So I'm starting off with the mustard seed, and I'm just going to apply that ink right over the top of the foiling, and I'll do one leaf at a time here. And I want my colors to be fairly muted, so I'm not going for a really dramatic look here. I kind of want a faded look, kind of a chalky look. So I'm using the Twisted Citron and a little bit of the Mowed Lawn. Now, when you go over these foils with your inks, you want to make sure that afterwards you do rub off any excess. You want to just buff off any excess that you might get on that foiling. But I'm going to go ahead and continue with my colors here. Again, I want to get a nice chalky finish, and these oxide inks will give me that look. And also remember that the oxide inks will show up on your dark colored cardstock, whereas your dye inks will not. They would just fade away into this dark cardstock. So I love the oxides because you can use them on your dark brown, black, navy blue cardstocks. And there you can see that I just buffed off a little bit of that excess ink off the top of the foiling. And that'll bring that shine back very nicely. So I'm just switching out all of those colors, just kind of blending those in, adding a little bit of color, then adding a little shading, and then going back to my lighter color and blending that out. And then again, just buffing off the top of that foiling a little bit. So I'll continue adding those colors here. And if you see that something doesn't look dark enough, just go back over it and add a little bit more color. So I am buffing off a little excess of the ink as I'm buffing that foil, the top of the foiling. I'm buffing off a little bit of that ink as well. Now, if you want the brighter colors, don't buff as much. So I continued filling in all these leaves with these beautiful fall colors. Now I'm going to come in with the antique linen, and I'm going to go around the edges of this panel. I'm using my Picket Fence Studio Life Changing brush, and I'm using a smaller one here. I want to kind of control how far I go in with this color. I do want to leave that dark chocolate brown color of the cardstock showing as well. So I'm just going to just kind of soften those edges a little bit. And I'll do the same thing for this other side as well. Now, I wasn't going to go down the center, but I did decide that I wanted to add a little bit of that softer color right down the middle here as well. So off camera, I did the same thing for that other panel. And the next thing I'm going to do is spatter a little bit of ink on here. So I'm going to press this ink pad right down onto my silicone mat. I'll spritz that with a little bit of water from my distress sprayer. And then with a small paintbrush, I'm going to go ahead and spatter this entire panel. And again, this is just going to add a little bit more interest and texture to this panel. Now you can let this sit and dry, or grab your heat tool, and I'm going to just quickly heat set this. We do want to add another layer of the spattering, so I'm going to heat set that and then come in with my ground espresso Distress Oxide ink and do the same exact thing. I'm going to spritz that with a little bit of water and spatter this panel. This is going to get a little bit muted out because of the dark cardstock behind it, but it still adds a little bit of texture there. Now here's where I decided to add a little bit of a frame around the outer edges here. So I'm using that ground espresso and just adding a little bit of it right to the edges just to frame this panel. And for this color, I'm not going to go down the center of the card. I'm just going to go around basically the four sides here. And you can see that up close how pretty that is. Now, so I've gone around all four sides with that ground espresso and not down the center of those two panels. Now I've die cut a second panel, the exact same panel that we cut earlier, And I'm going to be using my stylish script, Thank You and Happy Birthday Glimmer foil plate. And I'm going to grab that Happy Birthday. So we'll do the same thing here. We're going to create a little hinge for our sentiment. I'm just centering it. And this again will be for the inside of our card. And I've placed a little bit of purple tape there. And then we'll sandwich in our pretty foil. So again, the pretty side of the foil against the pretty side of the plate. I'm going to go ahead again and cut away any excess, which I can save for another project. And then again, we'll run this through the hot glimmer foil system. So I'm just checking that just to make sure that's lined up nice and straight. So now I've placed the glimmer plate down onto the platform. I've got that piece of cardstock again, the 100-pound weight, and I've got my 2 plates. So I'm going to go ahead and place those down, and I'll go ahead and press that button again. And once that turns solid green, we know it's ready to run through our machine. So I sped that up a little bit. So now it's turned solid green, and I can go ahead and run that through the Spellbinders Platinum 6 die cutting machine. And again, I'm going to run that through 2 times just to make sure I get nice pressure there. Now I can remove my plates and my cardstock. And I'm using that magnet again just to remove that hot foil plate and place it on that silicone mat. And now we can reveal that beautiful Happy Birthday. There was a little excess foiling there, so I'm going back to that mono Tombow sand eraser, and I'm going to remove any excess. And I've just used my surface sweep brush just to clean that off. So now going back to the antique linen ink pad, just like we did before, I'm going to go around all the way around the edges of this panel. And again, just creating that nice chalky border all the way around. Then I'll come back in with the ground espresso and just do those edges again. Now I'm going to spatter this panel with these same 2 colors. I'm spritzing those with some water, and I'll go ahead and spatter this. And this will just tie the inside and the outside together. It'll kind of bring your eye right in towards the middle of the card here. So I'll heat set that quickly, and then I'll do the second color. Now that that's all set, I'm grabbing the Lawn Fawn paper bag cardstock, and this is going to create my card base. So I've cut a piece of this cardstock that measures 5.5 by 8.5, and I'm going to score this at 2 1/8 inch. And then I'll flip that around and score it again at 2 1/8 inches. And that's going to create our gatefold card. So I can go ahead and fold in the 2 sides. I want to press that out really nicely with my bone folder here. And I'll bring in that other side. So that's the card base that we're going to be using. And now I can go ahead and insert this inside the card, but it's exactly the same size as the inside of the card, so it's a little tiny bit wide. I'm just going to use my Tim Holtz paper trimmer and trim away just a little sliver from each side. And I'll show you here how much I trimmed off, just a teeny tiny little bit. So now that'll fit nicely in there without too much bulk. So now I can go ahead and attach this to the inside of my card. I'm using my Tombow permanent adhesive, and I'll go ahead and place plenty of that around the back of this and attach that right in the center of the card here. So now I can go ahead and place these 2 panels on the front of my gatefold card, and I'm going to use that same adhesive. And I'll line these up really well right along the edge of the card here. So I did both sides, and now I want to get rid of that little angle there. So I'm using my Tim Holtz titanium shears, and I'm just going to snip away those edges. And you see when we open up the card, you get that beautiful angled look there. I just love how that looks. It just adds a lot of interest here. So again, when you open the card, you get that beautiful notch cut out. So now going back to the ground espresso, I'm just going to finish off those sides, just adding a little bit of color there. Just takes away that lighter edge. And I did that for the other side as well. And I'm also going to do that on the inside of the card at the top and the bottom. So that this way, if it didn't perfectly fit in there, you can take away that edge just by adding a little bit of ink. So now I've got these beautiful velvet ribbons. This is the velvet trims from the Tim Holtz Ideology collection, and this is the neutral colors. And you can see that any of these colors here would go really well with this, but I really love this dark chocolate brown. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this around my card and cut off a little bit. I'm leaving a little bit excess here. And then I've got a bead, and you want to make sure that your bead has a nice big opening in it because this velvet trim is fairly thick. So I'm cutting that velvet trim at a little bit of an angle just to make it easier to feed that through the bead. And then I'm using my tweezers just to pull that through. It just makes it a lot easier to pull that all the way through. Then on the other side, I'm going to just push that through there with my tweezers, and then I'll grab it from the other side and pull that again through the opening there. So this is just a bead I had in my stash that I've had forever, but again, you want to look for something that has that wider opening there. So now this will slide right over the top of my card and act as a little bit of a belly band here. And to tighten it, you just want to pull that bead in towards the card. But once I did that, I realized that I just didn't think that was enough. So I grabbed my Tim Holtz Ideology word bands, and these have all these beautiful sentiments on them. And so I'm going to grab one here, and this says, "Know in your heart you are loved." And I just thought that would be really pretty on this happy birthday card. But I wanted this to coordinate with my card a little bit better, so I'm going to use some Metallic Gilding Polish, and I'll be using the color Gold Treasure. Now this comes with a foam applicator. You can see how pretty this is. And to remove that applicator, just place the lid on your tabletop and press towards the side, and you get this nice foam applicator. So I'm going to just lift some of that ink out of the glass jar here, and I'll scrape it along the edges, but sometimes you can see that you still get a little bit excess ink here. So I like to pat it on my glass medium mat just to remove any of that excess ink there. And then you can go ahead and pat this right onto your little word band here. Now it is recommended for porous surfaces, but I didn't have any problem here. I found that it did dry very well. And I will use my heat tool a little bit later just to make sure that it's nice and dry, but you could set that out to air dry. So I'm going to keep applying layers of color here till I get a nice coating of this. And then again, I'm using that pick tool just to pick out any areas where it got down in those crevices, because we are going to be adding a little bit of color to those words here in a minute. So again, I like to pat it off on my glass medium mat just to take away any of that excess. I want a nice thin coating of this on here, and I can add extra layers onto this if I need to. So again, I'll just clean up those letters there. Now before I put my metallic gilding polish away, I like to spritz it with a little bit of water. That'll just keep it nice and moist. And then clean off the top of the lid there so it's not sticky. And then seal that nice and tight. And then I do take my applicator tool to the sink and rinse it off with some warm soapy water. So I've got a baby wipe here. I'm going to let that get a little bit drier. I'm going to just leave that sitting out for a minute here while I heat set this word band. And you don't want to touch this. This gets extremely hot. So do not touch it after you heat set it. Let it cool really well before you pick that up. And then I'm going to grab this Walnut Stain Distress Crayon from the Tim Holtz collection. And I'm going to use this crayon just to fill in those letters. So I want to kind of push it down into those letters a little bit and just fill in that area. And that'll make those letters a little bit darker. And that's why I had you scrape out any of that excess metallic gilding polish before, because we want this to go right down into those letters. Now I've got that baby wipe that now is just damp. I've let it air dry a little bit here while we were doing some of the other work. And I'm just going to lightly buff off that excess crayon. So I only want to leave what's sitting down in those little crevices there. Now, it might wipe away a little bit of the gilding polish, but I kind of like that look. I wanted to give it sort of a distressed look. So I wasn't worried about that. So again, a lighter touch if you don't want to take off any of that gold color, but I really didn't mind that it removed a little bit of the gold just to give it a little bit more of a distressed look. Then I'm just going to dry that off with my paper towel, and you can see up close how pretty that is. So now I can go ahead and slide this onto my word band. So I'm going to go from the front to the back. I'll bring it around the back side here, and then I'll go from the back up towards the front. Then I can go ahead and slide this right back through that bead. Now, for the metallic gilding polishes, I've done 2 videos on these polishes and all the different things you can do with them and how beautiful they look on embossing folders. So I will link those down below for you, and I'll link them on my blog as well. If you love this gilding polish, you may enjoy those 2 videos. So now I've got this completed word band. I'm just going to trim off that excess off the ends there, and then I can go ahead and slide this right over my card. And I really think this finishes off this card, just adds that beautiful metallic look to the front here, which ties in beautifully with our glimmer foil. So that'll easily slide off. Let me give you a closer look at this card. And again, we have that beautiful chalky, soft look to this. I just think it's so subtle, so beautiful. This would be great for a guy card or a sympathy card. I just think it's just really soft. And then slide that bead a little bit and your word band comes right off. And then we've got that beautiful happy birthday inside. And then again, I love how those edges are cut. Those corner cuts are just, I love that. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you don't miss a single video. And again, all of the products I used today are linked down below and also on my blog. As always, thank you so much for joining me today. Have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.